Hello and welcome back everyone to another episode on Showcase in Elden Ring. So, time for a new category of weapons. What's new to the franchise? Flails. This is the basic flail. Description reads, weapon consisting of a bludgeoning head attached to a handle by a chain. The iron ball is spiked and induces blood loss. Blows with this weapon cannot be parried, and the charged attack whirls within a round for increased force before striking, which of course has a unique skill, or at least this category of spinning chain, which we'll see later. So yeah. Okay. So it's cool to talk about some stats. Physically, well, it's okay. This is a fairly early game weapon, so it's not really that impressive. Scaling, you get a D for strength, D for dexterity, not bad. What's nice, at least somewhat, it comes with the passive built-in, which causes bleed buildup, which is also nice. As a weapon to guard with, don't. And you can see for the tree required, not a whole lot, just need a little bit of strength and dexterity. Again, starting weapon. And of course you got the spinning chain, which is not a whole lot of FP, but there is a running cost to it, as you'll see. Next, let's talk about historical significance. So, flails. Now, the original flail was this. It's a farming tool, used to beat grain, and I believe to separate the husks from the actual grain, so it can be, processed. Besides the point. How old is this? Ancient. We don't know how old. It's debated. So here's what we're talking about today, is a military flail. So yes, these exist. This small, short handle, though, is a bit of a historical contention, as we're not sure how widespread it was. Not very, according to historical use, its use. The bigger version here is the more actual used option, used in a shield lineup and various to strike over shields, as the short handle would be actually putting you at risk of, the recoil of the weapon bouncing off your opponent and hitting you. So yeah, the short version didn't exist all that much, if we're led to believe. And also the range is pretty consistent across all flails from the second image there. Alright, since we're starting a new category weapon, let's start animations. Now the flail, we can see that the basic attack is, very lumbering, very wide. Now I have a problem with the animations of the flails. As I'll compare with the axe, it has actually very similar, but there's a consistent issue with the flails. They ground you in place while in the middle of attack. What I mean by that is, when you strike, of course there's hang time on your weapons, where when you strike, you can't do anything else. You can dodge in certain aspects, but if you actually want to do the attack, you have to commit to it. So here's the power attack. Overhead strike, very similar as if you would use like an axe. And this is how you probably would use a flail for the most part, just not so dramatic, as a strike over your opponent's shield and hit him in the head primarily. And you can see you can charge up that power attack too for a good whirl. This attack is pretty useless, as you'll see later on. Alright, following that, we're gonna, do the crouch, and it's pretty much the same as the power attack. It's literally identical. Just, you're not dragging it behind you, as I just demonstrated there. Alright, next you get the light step back attack, and it's an uppercut with the flail. That would be actually quite painful if you managed to strike the chin of your opponent. And of course, the step back power attack doesn't exist. Then we got the sprint attack, which is probably the better use of this, is the quick strike with this, quick bashing over the side. And of course the power attack running does not exist. Alright. Next we got the jumping, which is probably, you'll see me use this a lot because it's the least amount of me being grounded. And then of course there's the power attack version, which is identical to the standard power attack. So yeah. Alright. Let's switch to two-handed, and you got the basic attacks. So yeah, well, more the same, just your character has a bit more dramatic movement, if you will. Using this weapon plus two-handed is actually redundant in terms of, if you were to use it in reality. You almost have the same amount of force being applied. And you can see that all the same moves are still there, is that your character is now more dramatic, and for two-handed, at least the charge-up power attack has two actions, where the single-handed version only has one. There's no follow-up. So I guess that's different, but very useless, because it grounds you in place to do that. So you get the crouch normal attack, which is pretty good. It's very fast. That's kind of one of the few good attacks about this. Alright. So, we're doing all the same animations. Now that hang time. I had a consistent problem using the flail. And in this video, yes, there's an update for the flails. You're seeing the old animations and their speed, which has been sped up, but they didn't fix the hang time issue of you're grounded in place while swinging. And your swings aren't quite fast enough, in my opinion, to keep up with a lot of enemies and not to be outdone by a lot of weapons. But yes, I think we're just about covered all the normal attacks. We're just now into jumping. It's all the same attacks, just two-handed and more exaggerated. Now for something unique, we got the special move for the flails. At least this flail. The spinning chain. Very impressive. Don't worry, she's definitely impressed when you do this in the shower. Now if you do a light attack, you do a exaggerated attack. And same thing goes for power. Of course, these cost extra FP to perform. But yeah. And you can do it single-handed as well. Doesn't matter. They do the same animations, one-handed or two-handed, regardless how you start. So we'll turn the HUD, and you can see that maintain that chain spin. Yes, it takes constant drain of FP, and to use those tags takes more FP as well. The nice thing is that is a constant attack, as arguably the fastest attack you can get done to get that bleed buildup. Using horseback, I would dare not to be hit or have anyone hit by a flail on horseback. It's probably the most destructive way to use a flail. Otherwise, in terms of range, you get arguably the same range as a hatchet, or hand axe if you will. But yeah, wouldn't want to even think of the damage you could do on being on horseback and hitting someone with that ball. And luckily, with the holding the power attack, you can easily hit them. And multiple times, as you see. So it's not bad horseback. A little short range, but pretty good. That's an unupgraded too. Alright, now where do you find this? Well, you probably already found it, but here it is at the Stormville Castle approach. You can go over here if you want to be sneaky somewhat and jump up here and, you know, ignore being stabbed. Don't worry, I'm okay. It is found right there. It's one of the first weapons you'll probably find, if you recognize those carriages as having treasure chest. Now, what I'm demonstrating here is a bit of a funny thing, is your enemy has a shield up, but it didn't do a whole lot, did it? The spinning chain worked a little bit. But your opponents, almost always in the case, have a greater range than you do. And their attacks are faster than yours. That's the downside to the flail. You can see the spinning chain is alright, we're building up, but if your opponent has any brains, he'll kill you quickly. So on the top right, you'll see the animation speed increased, and that will be for the performance. I used the old animation because I already had the footage, and it was redundant. I'll play it as many times as you need to see fit. It's across all animations. As for upgrades, I will not be using any, I'll only use the standard upgrades so I can maintain using the special spinning chain. And I'll be back after these upgrades here are done. Okay, so, how's a weapon? I don't like it. Of all things Elden Ring added to the franchise, mind you, was my blunder missing that. But you'll see me doing the jump attack a lot because I don't like the other attacks. They give you a lot of hang time of just standing there. These attacks with the flail are too, exaggerated. If it was quicker, this wouldn't be a problem. But the problem is, yes, the update did buff this to speed up animations and some stats, which the upgrades are, actual reflection of what's a post-update. But the actual problem of hang time is still there for these flails. I don't like it. It's a short-range weapon that is not fast enough, and it's not tough enough to be, take the previous review I did, the Spike Cestus. That weapon is shorter range, but higher DPS, so I would choose that over the flail any day, and both moves do bleed build-up too. So even just using the special moves, they aren't doing enough damage to kill my opponent entirely. They do alright, but alright's not good enough. Because here I am in the second playthrough reviewing these, and alright doesn't cut it. So, in terms of, weapon usability, now unfortunately I don't get any footage of it not being able to be parried, but I don't think that's really a huge issue. Because I doubt anyone wants to use these in PvP, given the hang time issue, and the short range and the slow swing speed. Because I had people trying to invade me, but, generally they don't try to do the parry maneuver, they just rather blast me with overwhelming magic. Okay, now that clean knight fight was pretty pathetic, so we're going to do a second one here. And this one's a more clear representation of being in a proper fight. And we can see that I can get a few hits in, but I'm continuously outranged by that clean rod. That's the constant issue I face. Even though I line up attacks and hit them, I'm getting stabbed in turn because of it. It's because just gotta get into that range, and plenty of times I can't without getting hurt. So sometimes win, sometimes I don't. So here's some Red Phantom fights, as I can actually demonstrate proper range and using it without being blasted to death by magic. So against the Weeb here, he has the clear advantage. He has more range, he's faster, and let me just see, he doesn't have to worry about being caught in place using his weapons. Especially the fucking, was it Rivers of Blood? No, not that, but whatever. It's just a huge class difference of weapons. You can see me trying to charge up those attacks and just not getting it because my enemy just immediately whips out their attack. So here's fight number 2. I cheated a little bit and got one hit on him. But even here, it's still not preferable. My opponent still gets away very easily for these attacks. So, what are the benefits to Flail? In my opinion, there aren't a whole lot. As you can see there, it didn't break his poise to stop his spell casting. I'm not sure where this weapon fits. Will the other Flails be better? I sure hope so. But this basic one fails in a lot of categories, in my opinion. Is there worse weapons? Well, probably. Are there a huge amount of them? Probably not. So we'll see if future Flails perform better. Because if this is setting the bar, it is set pretty low. Okay, let's move on to some pros and cons before I bash this thing even further. Okay, let's talk about some pros and cons about the Flail. Now the pros, well, it's a low barrier to entry weapon. You can found relatively early in the game. And I guess it's a new category of weapons for the Souls franchise. And it's built-in bleed damage. And that's about it for the pros. On the cons, well, its damage is not exactly amazing. It's lackluster there. Its range is a bit short compared to majority weapons. Its animation tends to ground you in place to deliver your attacks. So yeah, those are some pretty glaring issues there. Alright, so enough about pros and cons. Let's talk about some score. Damage, I'm not impressed by this. It's C. I'm not impressed by the damage at all. Even sneak attacks didn't really kill my opponents. I still had to finish them off with a single attack. Even just charging up those attacks still didn't kill them. Reach, a D. It's not cestus short, it's not dagger short, but it's hatchet short. Animation, I'm going to give a C. Despite it being new and interesting, that hang time being grounded in place to deliver those attacks and at its speed, even after that buff, the update, it's not good. Scaling is the only place where it does decent. I'm going to give that a B-. Not amazing scaling, but plenty good enough across multiple of the different upgrades. Miscellaneous, a C. For this incarnation of the flails, this starting example, I can't see much reason to recommend it. It's early in the game, but so are a lot of things. A lot of better things at that. So yeah, in total, I'll give the basic flail a C overall. There's a lot better stuff out there. You really shouldn't use this. In PvP, PvE, anywhere. Unless you want to, you know, give yourself a challenge. And that sort of wraps up how I feel about the flail. Not very impressed in the beginning when I found it, even less impressed when I reviewed it in the second playthrough. Hopefully their flails aren't like this. Otherwise it's going to be like the old Dark Souls how I feel about the whip category, if anyone watched those. No matter. That'll be all for today, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. Hope to see you guys next time. Take care out there.